and trying to get bit. How do we take that to the open water? Okay. Now, how do we get up on the bow? How do we get fish up on the surface like that? And how do I position the boat to make that happen to where we can get a fly into fish when they're up and doing that? Okay. Conditions plays a big part in that factor, right? I don't know if you see on the bow, I have this platform which allows us to really fish some pretty good swell and bump and be stable in it, okay? That's a game changer having that. It also allows us to chase these fish down that are up on the surface and foaming and staying up on the surface. You can lock yourself in, and I can actually now run you into those fish instead of trying to intercept, take that extra 30 seconds on getting set up. That could be the make or break. That 30 seconds, we lost our shot, right? It's not quite as drastic as permit fishing, but it can be. Open water plans, it's the same thing. Now I gotta think, okay, there has been no kelps around, okay? The kelp's dried up. Can't find any grass, any kelp. And the fish, if there is, they haven't been holding on patties, right? So now I know it's an open water plan. Scenario may be, you know, other boats are picking them up, you know, trolling cedar plugs or trolling tuna feathers, slow trolling mackerel by a couple dipping birds. So now we're into the visual game. And now I'm looking for signals all day. Okay? Instead of staying on the motor and looking for those kelp patties, now I'm on the motor until I'm glassing and I find a bird, 2 birds, 3 birds, a pile of birds, a bird sitting on the water. Now I slow it down a little bit. Okay? How do we take this open water plan and how do we get those ingredients mixed? Okay, well, now our main tool we have is chum. And we talked a little bit about if I can find a school in chum, I can stop that fish. How do we do that with no signals? If a bird's not telling me something's there? Okay, so a couple ways. Is stopping a school of tuna that is above 125 feet can be done simply by throwing chum. Okay? If the scenario is I've got no signals, but I know there's been some fish in the area because I know boats have got hooked up, we're gonna put the trolling rods out. Okay? I'm usually gonna stack them on one side or the other. If I have a right-handed caster, I'm gonna stack them on my starboard side. And I'm usually just gonna put 2 out. Cedar plug and a tuna feather, okay? So on the back of my boat, here's my cockpit. And here's my motors, okay? Right-handed caster, I'm gonna have a bucket here. And the fly rod and the fly line is going to be stripped out in that bucket and ready to go. On this side, in a rod holder here, and either on an outrigger, I'm going to drop back a lure. I'm going to drop a lure. Okay? And I'm going to troll around until we get bit. Right? This is back to using my electronics. Okay? I can drive over the fish and meter them before we get bit and know. Okay? Not know that I'm going to get bit, but know I went over a fish. All right, be ready. You're going to have the guy kind of sitting here on the corner waiting and paying attention. Okay? Some guys will hold the rod in their hand and just really ready to go. Some guys may kick back. If I get the signal or I mark fish, tell them to get ready. If this rod gets bit, the first thing we do is take that fly and throw it in the water and let the movement of the boat, I have a wake here, let the movement of this boat pull all that fly line out of the bucket. Now I'm 100 feet off the boat. Now I'm in neutral while this is hooked up. I turned the boat so that you don't get tangled. The fly's out here now, and that school of fish is still here. That's just a quick drop. We could stop the boat and try and make a cast, but those fish are gonna be long gone. All I'm trying to do here is just pick up a fish before they move away, okay? Trolling rod goes off, fly goes in the water, gets to the end, boat goes in neutral, and just kind of hold it there, see if you get bit. I turn the boat, now we're on a drift. Now what are we doing? Shake and bake, okay? Don't rip that whole fly line in and make another cast. Now you just pull it through the water. You're making this cast with 4 false casts, and that school's swimming away. Leave that fly out there if we didn't get bit on the fly. Now I'm adding chum. We got one on the line, on the troll. We got a fly out there, and now I'm throwing chum. What does that school of fish do? Stops. Goes, oh, something's here. All right? My cousin is acting weird and being pulled up to this big dark bait ball up there. I think I'll stick, oh look, a little piece of sardine. Another one. Now this guy and this guy and this guy, now the whole school's like, oh, we like this. Now I'm railing, now I'm throwing chum. Now that back rod is bit, okay? Now my second angler works his way over to the bow while we're on that drift. Now he's up on the bow. Now he's fishing. Now we got 2 anglers fishing. I've got the fish with the boat, and I've got them stuck with the chum. Within 100 feet, upper water column, and they're happy and they're chewing and we're cooking fish on the fly. You brought up, forget your name.
Sorry?
What was your name?
Bruce.
Bruce. Bruce was asking me or telling me about his Mexico trip coming up, and he was saying something along the lines of, yeah, you know, a fish boils here, and so you want to cast over to the fish. Now, I just want to think about when we're on this shake and bake, and I'm throwing chum. This could be a 10-ton school of fish, 100-ton school of fish. I could kind of know from my meter, but it could be a huge school of fish. If I'm throwing chum and a fish boils here on a chum, a fish boils there on a chum, and I rip that fly out to go cast at this fish, however many false casts you need to make, I flop it short, okay, let me shake it out. That fish is now 100 yards over there. There's more fish below the surface than there is on top when we're seeing that, right? So back to keep that fly in the water. Everything happened on that boat. When I turned that boat and that fly was already out, just like the kelp patty, the back door, right? That fly's there and ready for a fish to grab. Now the angler on the bow can get to work, right? Keep those flies out there, work them. Then we'll figure out, hey, are these fish gonna keep feeding or not, right? We may get bit a couple times and that school's done. All right, reel them up. Guy in the bow reels in his rod, put the rod away. Guy in the stern strips his fly into the bucket, drops it back. Boat starts moving, drop the trolls back in, keep looking. Okay? We may drive over another scenario, drive over some fish that I find on the meter and we didn't get bit. I may just kind of run a circle and start throwing some chum. They may not bite. They may not bite. All of a sudden a boil. Oh, boil. Now I get back into that same technique. The guy dropped his fly off the back. I'm reeling in the trolls. The guy gets up on the front. We start chumming. We start our drift. Let's see if these fish will stick. Keep throwing chum. Okay. Time management. Where I'm at. Where am I at in my day? I'm looking in my bait tank. You know, how much bait do I have left? Oh, it's 9 a.m. and I've gone through half my bait and we haven't got bit yet from this school. I should probably go ahead and give up on this school. Leave fish to find fish that are biting. A mile over here, I could maybe find a school of fish, and these fish want to eat, where these fish are just kind of observing and eating the chum. There may be a school over here a mile away. That's our school, right? Got to keep things moving, got to keep it moving. Same thing in those situations. This picture here of PJ up on the bow, this is bluefin, okay? In open water surface fishing, we can see fish that we call foaming, where these fish have pushed a ball of anchovy up to the top. And that's what you see here. This white water is the fish feeding on that bait ball. Okay. We can try and position the boat in there and try and get a cast off the bow or off the stern. If it's conditions, we're doing everything off the stern. Okay. If I've got bump and wind and it's not stable. We can do everything we can do on the bow, we can do from the stern of the boat, right, with the right boat maneuvering. So surface activity, okay? It may be a day we're not gonna do that troll technique, okay? The troll technique, just so you know, I call that my doorbell, okay? When that troll rod goes off, ding, ding, you know, zzz, oh shit, let's go, we got a fish, okay? It just tells us that the fish are there. Another type, well, foamers, okay? We can chase these fish around like this and try and get them on that active fly, cast a fly into a fish, and it is an absolute blast. But it's probably one of the least effective ways to fish these tuna out here. You wouldn't think. You'd think if I found a giant school of fish up on the surface, slamming all this bait, and I threw a fly into them, that they would eat the fly. Sometimes they don't. And we have more an advantage on foaming fish than bait fishermen, because we can match that size anchovy and that bait that they're on, the micro bait, which is bait this big, better, right? Sometimes this fly on a foam game is more effective than throwing surface irons and jigs and other, you know, baits into them. So if you can get yourself positioned right, it's an absolute blast. But it's probably one of the least effective ways. If I really wanted to get bit on this foamer with PJ on the bow, and if this day it was not working, we could not get them to stay up to where we would be able to get the fly into them. I take PJ and I go and I put him on the corner, like I showed you in that last picture, okay?